First of all, I'd just love to say hello, everyone. My name's Sheena, and I work with the Google News Initiative Strategy and Program Operations based out of Singapore. And it's been so lovely listening to all of these amazing programs, but also very, very inspiring. When I was asked to speak for this, I genuinely thought of how design could fit into the sort of sentiment right now. And I think listening to Ken, listening to Sonny has really sort of reinvigorated my spirit on the world of possibilities that we have. And just to sort of put into context, as I just begin to present my slide, that we started working on the Design Accelerator last year as an attempt to sort of go out and solve problems that we felt did not have a shape and a form, and to give it shape and form by using design methodology. And I think more than ever it's relevant in this time where we're navigating a new world order, and there will be problems that one would encounter both in terms of workflows, but also how do you design for products. And so what we're hoping through this presentation is that you're able to take back some nuggets that might help you navigate that, but also we put together a playbook, as Alan mentioned, that has a lot of the toolkits and resources that can be used for this purpose. So hopefully it is useful. Can everyone see my slide?
It's coming up.
And it's
there we go.
Amazing. So once again, I'll be speaking to you today about how we brought and why we brought design practices for media as part of the news initiative Design Accelerator, the first of its kind to be launched globally. And thank you, Alan and Rashad, again for giving us the opportunity. Just taking a step back from design to talking about innovation. This is a word which is thrown around a lot in terms of news industry and businesses need to innovate. And when we look at innovation, how do we describe it? And we describe it from the fact that ultimately innovation fundamentally at its core is really looking at who your users are, developing a mechanism to gather their needs. On top of that, building insights and then using those insights to come up with solutions that are truly useful for these users. I know Rohan earlier mentioned, what is it in it for me? And if we don't focus on that, then that is not true innovation. And at Google, we do this across our products, across our teams, and across our businesses. These are 4 screenshots of different ways we bring innovation to our market. On the left-hand side with the yellow sign is Google X, which is our internal incubation body and subsidiary that sort of looks at ideas, use design principles there to incubate 10x radical innovation. On the right-hand side is Google Ventures that takes external ideas, incubates them, again, using design sprints. At the bottom, you will see that we actually have an internal marketing or an internal team that runs design sprints for different functions and projects, as well as the next billion users that sits in Asia Pacific, trying to sort of come up with new solutions for these developing markets, and design methodologies are a big part of their problem solving as well. And so, when we looked at innovation and then we went to the market, there are a lot of preconceived notions around innovation. You need to think 10x, you need to disrupt the market. There are big ideas needed and it has to be radical. But we went when the Google News Initiative now has been in play for close to about 2.5 years. And we worked through different programs, ones that are closed programs working on a particular topic to open applications. And when we asked our participating publishers on how they were tackling the issues of innovation and what were some of the roadblocks that they were seeing around innovation, we received very strong feedback that the media organizations, one of the biggest gaps that they see is that innovation is hard to first ideate on and then to finally execute on. And the 3 main reasons why that happens is, number 1, there is a siloed approach. If you are innovating as part of editorial, that's different from how you're innovating across business, and these divisions don't truly speak to each other. And you have not started to see a trend around data, and data being like the single thread that connects editorial to business, but still, primarily speaking, both from large to small scale organizations, siloed approach is a big roadblocker. The second is what Rashad earlier mentioned. How do you get your users to engage? And so how do you not only provide them the content and the information that they need, but how do you create products, whether it be a website or an app, that truly is a product mindset at its core, and engaging with the user and how they want to engage with this information versus just giving them the information in the manner that you think is most befitting. And then lack of empathy. I am not from the industry, but I cannot. Journalists are most used to the interviews and going out there and finding the information that validates the stories that they pursue. But when you come to the new age where you're looking at younger demographics, not really interested in hard news, sort of more inclined towards playing games or spending times with their friends over social apps, how do we go out there and understand that? And that lack of empathy is what we received was a big challenge in news organizations truly innovating. And so as Google, we decided that that's I think the design principles that we implement in a lot of our work across products is something that is befitting to building a program around. This is a slide from our partners Echos that kind of talks through the 3 core values of design principles or design thinking that really matches the challenges that we surfaced earlier, which is 1, empathy. How do you take somebody else's cognitive and emotional perspective in their own context? How do you understand that from a 360-degree angle? Number 2, how do you work together to achieve something cross-functionally? How do you use collaboration at the core of your diversity of thought, diversity of experience at the core of your product design? And thirdly, how do you then take that product and actually view it as an experimentation versus the end final result that basically is going to make you more risk aversive? So how do you ship faster and fail fast so that you can actually create something that's successful in the market? And based on that, we partner with industry experts, Echos, who are an 8-year-old design lab that originated in Brazil, but have been based out of Asia Pacific in Australia as our design experts. And then obviously Splice here as our industry experts to bring that like on the ground knowledge to our program and make it relevant for the news industry. And then we had an open application where partners applied based on their design practices current and where they wanted to reach. And we selected 7 partners across 7 different countries, and their portfolio ranged from small to large scale companies that we then worked with over the past 4 months. And, true to our belief, we realized that in order for us to build a design accelerator for the news industry, we had to go back to put our thinking caps on and sort of think through a framework that is relevant to the news industry. So we spent 3 days locked up in a room, and Rashad and Alan can speak to some of the intensity that was brought into the room. But what we did was develop a back sprint. We went through every exercise of what a design accelerator could look like and ensure that it was relevant to the people we were going to take this to, but also to their day-to-day practices and operational workflows. So we customized the program for the newsrooms, all of the exercises, all of the formats, and then we chose a portfolio of partners together as well who we thought were befitting in terms of the insights that we wanted to gather. And fourthly, I think, which is relevant to this room, right? We worked remotely across APAC. I'm based out of Singapore. The fortunate thing is that Alan and Rashad are here, but our Echos team were based out of Australia, and the other 7 partners, Sony Frontier being one of them, were based out of 7 different countries. And so executing a 4-month-long, 5-month-long project across different countries was definitely a part of the design of the accelerator itself. And then our actual program and what the participating publishers got was 5 different services. Number 1, they went through a rigorous online pre-work in trying to understand different design practices. Then we actually did on-site work with them, 3-day training across 40 to 50 people when it came to large organizations, with 10 to 15 people across editorial, HR, marketing, business, as well as anybody who was working in admin, to come in and understand design thinking principles, and not just look at it from like, how do we develop a new product, but how can they take these exercises to their day-to-day and use them to sort of think differently about the work that they do. And then we selected a core team that was given a predetermined challenge by the CEOs of the company, a business impact issue that they were trying to solve for. And then they used those 5 days to work across a design sprint. Post that, we are currently working across facilitation and project management, and then post-program assessment. Number 4 and number 5 are deeply affected by the COVID situation right now, because these were also going to be in person, and now we're working through how do we do virtual trainings, how do we create champions in these organizations that can carry the work that we've done forward from here on. So I just wanted to shift gears to what we did, to what we learned. And design thinking, as mentioned earlier, is something that has been used in different industries in different formats. But when you bring it to media organizations after the programs that we ran, based on the problems that these organizations surfaced, we thought we could understand that there were 4 key areas where these practices could be applied. And it's number 1, again, understanding your audience, not just from a market research perspective, but, again, Frontier just spoke about the focus groups that they've been implementing in order to understand what is the price that they want to build a subscription product for different brackets of audiences. What do they truly need? To give you an example, one of our partners was looking to understand what the value that they can drive for younger audiences, demographic between 18 to 25. And hard news is something that these younger audiences are not interested in. What they realized was that because they're fresh out of college, information around how can they think about their career, mentorship, how do they build a financially stable path forward for their lives. Those were some of the topics that were better and more relevant to them. And that process wouldn't have happened had they not gone out there talking to these younger audiences. So, and not going there with a preconceived notion and biases, removing their biases and actually questioning them and understanding their insights. Number 2, where you can see an impact of design thinking clearly, is delivering valuable content, creating valuable content. And this is, again, not from a sense of this is the most relevant information, but actually thinking, where does value come from? Sometimes you'd be surprised that it doesn't come from actually creating the content, but how the content is delivered. And going out there and asking, what are some of the platforms that your users are most engaging with, and developing that for them can also create tremendous value. Thirdly, new revenue streams. Again, revenue is something that's always top of the mind, considering the new world order that we're in, advertising, the impact it's going to have. But I love the messaging that has been so far around the optimism around subscriptions, the optimism around memberships. You see individuals truly trying to use that value of community and trust, and how can news publishers start capitalizing on that is going to be key moving forward. So how can you use some of the design practices that we've developed in defining what those revenue streams should be? And fourthly, this is really key, again, culture, organizational workflows. One of our partners really felt that an organizational conversation and collaboration required an internal platform that could help folks engage with each other on a day-to-day basis versus one-off meetings. And so we solved to develop a prototype for the organization internally, instead of actually developing a product for their users. And these 4 key pillars, issues, topics have been common amongst these organizations, and we have an in-depth template for that on our website that you can use moving forward. So yes, it's great to know what our insights are, but what were some of the challenges that we face when we ran the program? And Rashad and Alan, please feel free to chime in because you were on ground with some of these partners as well. Defining the right problem for me was the number 1. We had partners, we asked our partners while they were applying for the application, what was the problem that they wanted to solve for? And they all had a fairly clear direction of where they wanted to go. But as they went through the process, they reversed reverted back to the problem and said, this is not the right problem to solve. And we had to really work with our partners to dig deeper within the organizations, from CEO levels to head of digitals to actual editors, to understand whether it was the right problem we were solving or not. And that lack of clarity can be a very big challenge to solve in these situations. Number two, a lot of the partners knew that they were already using design practices, whether it came from like UX experience to actually designing, doing design sprints for their websites. But it wasn't really part of their practice on a day-to-day basis when they were designing for products or subscriptions or memberships. And so even though they thought they knew design, they truly didn't. And so we had to work patiently across our program to develop those insights. And we knew what we were getting ourselves into. If there is any industry that's strapped for time, it is the news industry. But truly to the process, it was an 8-day commitment, and we trained close to about 193 people. That said, the biggest challenge was that when we were doing the sprints, when you require 100% attention on developing the product solutions, folks were still busy, dealing with fires or a particular issue that's come up in their market. And so our process from here on is also going to be, how do we develop an even more tighter program that can bring design thinking to newsrooms? And once they've designed the prototypes, it is still hard to get the MVP out there. There is a lot of inertia. Perfectionism runs really well in newsrooms. And so moving from prototype to MVP and going and actually testing out the product out there is still a big challenge. And so we want to focus on how do we address this. And then hierarchy is still a lot of inertia. That openness that you require in order to do design solutions is still, I feel, an area that one, we could facilitate better, and two, newsrooms can truly focus on, because it does become a roadblock in actually creating openness of ideation and brainstorming. And so our lessons from the entire process has been that it really, really is important when you design any solution. What is your mission? The clarity of mission, which problem are you solving for? And in this case, as we go through remote journalism, remote work streams, remote collaboration, what is the problem? The more specific you can get on the problem and then use some of the tools that we've shared, the better your solution is going to be. Executive buy-in. One of the biggest lessons was, even though we had executives come in and say, we truly support this program, the fact that these teams developed a solution and then had to go back and pitch it to the executives, we realized that we needed executive engagement at more sort of regular intervals than towards the end, because then you have to rebuild the empathy, because their biases and assumptions on what the user truly need comes in. And so really having the right people in the room through the process, not just towards the beginning and the end, is a key learning from this process. And real human insights. It's about, where are your users? What do they truly want? What do they truly value? And in a world which is going to get more isolated, trust and community, I believe, are going to be very, very strong values that we would need to capitalize on. And how do we imbibe that in our businesses, in our solutions, and in our brand is going to be key moving forward. And lastly, could not say this more, letting go of the old. Empathy and collaboration are the ways that new opportunities and new innovation can be unlocked. And so that is still key to the lessons that we've learned. We've not just captured this, I've tried to sort of do justice to what all we've learned, but there is much more. And we've captured all of that in a playbook that's available for you to download and engage with at newsinitiative.withgoogle.com, Design Accelerator. I'll also send this link to everyone post this presentation. But we'd love to hear from you. There is also, you can connect to us through our newsletters, each organization's newsletter, or you can write to us at the addresses given if you have questions, or if you're thinking about how to sort of implement design practices in the new world order. And finally, we're continuing our commitment across product, mentorship, and facilitations. The project did finish in 6 months, but we have work that we're doing with these organizations post the project as well and assessing where their design practices have landed and mentoring them through the prototype to minimal viable product stage. So our work continues and it's not done yet. And thank you for listening to me. And I'll take some questions now.
All right. Well, thank you, Sheena. All of that felt strangely familiar, having gone through the GNIDA or the Google News Initiative Design Accelerator with you. So listen, I'm gonna read out some quick questions here. So Kanchan Mukherjee, Kanchan, I'm just reading out your question. So while implementing design thinking principles, did you meet people who didn't know what design thinking was? I mean, did you have to train people from scratch?
Absolutely. So this is why the program was designed twofold. We realized that if we went in there and said, hey, let's run a product sprint, nobody's going to be ready for it. So we actually ran a 3-day basic training on design thinking, where we went through the concept one by one, did very simple exercise for people to understand how to empathize, collaborate. And then we ran a proper design sprint post that. And we also selected folks from the design thinking training who were truly who we thought would be key in designing the actual solution. So yes, mostly we did. Right, Rishad?
I hope that answers your question, Kanchan, if you're still here. And, I have a comment from Gayatri Nathan who says, 10 on 10 relatable. I'm Gayatri, a teacher and researcher working on developing products, site targeted at students and teachers. Very appreciative of the frameworks for thinking provided in this presentation. I also know Jessica, who happens to be our next speaker. We've learned a lot from Jessica and we worked with her. I know that she's run through a lot of these issues with her students at the Weekham's Wee School of Media Comms. Corinne has a question. How will the impact of this project be followed up? Sprints generate a lot of energy and enthusiasm, but the day-to-day grind of news can undermine implementation. How are the organizations you worked with managing for this? So we've gone through exactly this, Sheena.
No, absolutely. And so specifically what we're doing, just for clarity purposes, we have follow-up mentorship sessions where we've taken the prototypes and we're sitting with these teams on, is it a business model that they need to build on it? Is it something that they need to address from a user testing perspective? Is it actually building a pitch for their stakeholders that they need to focus on in order to get funding for this? Some of these applicants have gone ahead and applied for other funding sources as well to be able to develop from prototype to MVP. So we're actually keeping a very close, not just a close eye, but actually working with our partners to take them at least to the MVP stage where they can validate the solution. And then post that, we're looking at how design practices have changed in the organization.
I'm going to go really quick now. Alan, please jump in and tell me if I'm pushed for time.
You are kind of pushed for time. Maybe let's do one question and then
throw it?
Let's do one quick one.
Okay, one quick one.
Go for it.
I'm going in order. So Trin has asked Sheena, has it been harder to introduce new workflows to older, more established newsrooms, your legacy media in Asia, as opposed to the smaller newsrooms, which I think that's a good one.
Now, is that the end of the question? Sorry, Rishad.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. The more digital, the more native, digitally native an organization is, and the more, there's a sweet spot. If they are too small, then executive decision becomes harder, and funding becomes harder, and implementing things become harder. If they're too big, they've got too much inertia in there. So I do feel there's a sweet spot of the scale of the organization and how digitally native they are. The more digital practices have penetrated in the organization, the better they are at implementing design practices as well. That is definitely a correlation we've been able to draw, if that helps.
All right. Listen, thank you, Sheena. That was so awesome. Please download the playbook, everybody. Take a look at it. It's also a website. It's also PDF. It's everything you want it to be.